Hi, and welcome to the video. We're going to talk about how to perform a real quick property analysis on an apartment building. Some people call this the back of the napkin or back of the envelope analysis. But basically, what we're going to talk about is how to determine if it's worth your time to really dig into all the operating statements and the written rolls and spend like an hour or more on really underwriting a apartment building investment, something of like 50 or more units. So the first thing we're going to have to do though is we're going to have to provide some definitions. And when we're speaking of how to determine the value of commercial real estate, things like apartment buildings or self-storage facilities, mobile home parks, and other commercial real estate assets, we have to get clear on a few definitions. So the real way we determine value of these assets is by determining the net operating income of that investment. And there's a ratio between the net operating income as well as the prevailing cap rate or capitalization rate of that market area or the sub-market that property is located in. So let's define net operating income first, and the NOI or net operating income is defined as the operating income minus the operating expenses. And your operating income includes everything like your rents that you collect from apartment tenants who rent your units out. They Tenants might also pay extra fees for utilities like electricity or cable or water, or even they might even pay extra fees for reserved parking. Various ways to increase your operating income, but your gross operating income minus your operating expenses equals your net operating income. And your operating expenses are basically anything that you spend to operate your real estate investment or that business operation, i.e., that apartment building or that self-storage facility. So operating expenses will be anything like payroll or property management or trash or maintenance or landscaping, things like that, taxes and insurance and all the things that are associated with operating your business. Your expenses is going to equal your net operating income. So the other thing that we're going to divide our net operating income by is what we call our capitalization rate, or our cap rate for short. And your cap rate is really if you paid all cash for the property that you're investing in, that would be your annualized rate of return. That would be your cash on cash return you would receive on an annual basis if there was no debt associated with the property. But since the majority of real estate investments are purchased with debt and they have leverage associated with them, we use cap rate in this scenario as a measurement of value. And basically, it's very similar to your comparative market analysis in the real estate space. In the commercial real estate area, we use cap rates very similarly in that it's a measurement of value on what similar or like kind apartment buildings, for example, have sold for. And the difference between residential real estate is that you're buying that because you want it, and it's more of an emotional purchase, but it's also based off of what similar properties are sold for in the recent history. Whereas the cap rate measures what similar income streams on similar buildings have traded for in the recent history. So that's how we determine value on commercial real estate. Moving on, what we want to discuss is the back of the envelope analysis. And step one is to determine what the operating income on that property is. So what we need is a few items. One of the things we needed to know to perform this analysis is the number of apartment units that this building has that we could charge rents on. And we're going to multiply the number of units by 12 months. But we also need to know what the average market rent on each unit is. So what we're going to do is add up all the rents, and then we're going to divide by the number of units, so we get an average market rent. And then we're going to multiply that number by 93% because we have to account for a vacancy factor. So in this example, we're going to assume that our building is occupied 93% for the year. So what it looks like is if we had a 100-unit apartment building with an average monthly rent of $1,000 per unit times 12 months times 93% occupancy, we'd have a annual operating income of $1,116,000. Then in step two, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to figure out what our operating expenses on this particular apartment building is. And on average, across the nation, it's anywhere between 50 and 60% of the gross income would equal our operating expenses. And in this example, we're going to use 55% as our operating expenses of our gross income. So 55% of $1,116,000 equals $613,800 in operating expenses annually. So then we're going to figure out what our net operating income is. So that's operating income minus operating expenses. And in this example, we have $1,116,000 minus $613,800 is going to equal $502,200 as our net operating income, or our NOI. So to figure out what an approximate value of this real estate investment would be, we're going to take our NOI of $502,200 divided by the cap rate, and we're going to use a 5% cap rate in this example because currently that's about the prevailing cap rate nationwide. It differs market to market, city to city, but we're going to use 5% as an example. So we're going to take that $502,200 divided by 5% is going to equal $10,044,000. So if you get approached by a broker or even a seller in an off-market opportunity saying they have a 100-unit apartment building at $1,000 a door average rent for $10 million purchase price, it might be worth your while to take some more time to look at the financials a little further and invest some time in evaluating this deal a little further. If it's not within those that area, that price point, it might not be worth your time to spend that time. But this is a real quick back of the envelope analysis of if it's worth your time to spend investigating further. If you got any other questions or you want to learn more about this, go ahead and you can contact me on my website, by email. You can schedule an appointment with me or DM me on any of my social media platforms. Go ahead and like, share, subscribe, and follow. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.